Slow Food is an international grassroots movement, and we champion and support good, clean, and fair food for all, which of course means many things. We try to cover all the many dimensions and dynamics of the slow food world, and we're very lucky to have a robust, expert, and really fantastic network of people in slow food from many, many activities and engagements. Roberto joined us at Slow Food Nations last year as a merchant. Roberto and Dave is who we have today. They are the owners of Emerald Garden Microgreens based in Bennett, Colorado, I think. And they are a part of the Slow Food Network out there in Colorado, and they started Emerald Gardens Microgreens in 2017, I believe, with the mission of increasing year-round access to good greens for all people. So I'm going to hand it over to you two. Thank you guys so much for being here this morning, afternoon, whatever time it is for you. We're really grateful for your time and happy to have you.
Great. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you to Slow Food. It's a great opportunity to really connect with people, to talk about the importance of local food and a different way to really participate in your local food systems. So my name is Roberto. I'm Dave. And we are the co-founders of Emerald Gardens. We operate at the intersection of sustainable technology, food access, community engagement, and now we're starting to realize how important it is for us to respond to the COVID situation in our own unique ways. We can all take a small part and have a major impact in our communities. So today we're going to talk about microgreens, why they're important for our health and our local food system, and how to eat them, as well as how to grow them. And Dave's going to talk a little bit about some of the sustainability implications of growing microgreens.
Well, yeah, here at Emerald Gardens, we strive for a few things, but some of them are trying to help the climate overall, and mainly food safety, which really comes along with quality. With those things, we take several aspects of our greenhouse, which is a passive solar design. It helps gain sunshine during the day, and then in the wintertime, it helps gain and retain the heat so that we can use less overall propane or excess heating costs that we usual greenhouses have to go through to use. So most typical style greenhouses use anywhere from 12 to 18 hours of propane during the winter, and we got it down to around 6 to 8 hours a day. And that was just with the design of the greenhouse, and also a few more things that we've implemented. We have a geothermal system, which is basically, some refer to it as a climate battery. We actually store heat in it during the wintertime, store heat in it, and then it releases back into the greenhouse at night. That also helps with those temperature swings, and it really helps our greens stay healthy and happy. Along with that, though, food safety is always coming more and more up to the forefront, and really we've gotten our GAP certification, which is into getting into food safety so that we can get into more markets.
What does GAP stand for?
GAP is good agricultural practices. It's mainly so that you can know that your farmers are following a food safety standard and something that they have implemented over time to realize how to grow your food safely. And it's really a collaboration of working together and knowing your farmer and knowing that they're doing good for your community.
Yeah, we definitely take pride in what we do, and microgreens are a great crop to grow because not only are they quick growing, you can turn around a crop to harvest in about 7 to 10 days. Some varieties take longer, but it's the relatively low resource input that goes to grow them. We use automatic watering systems that deliver water through a recirculated irrigation platform that allows us to just water the roots, and the plants soak up exactly what they need. Because we're growing in a vertical integrated system, we're able to minimize water evaporation and any sort of waste. So what we try to do is really focus on precision agricultural techniques to become as sustainable as possible, because we understand the cost of growing food. And I know that some greenhouses can generate some waste in energy. And so we're trying to bring in some permaculture regenerative aspect to using high-tech precision growing systems in our greenhouse. So yeah, one of the wonderful things about microgreens, I kind of experienced personal health issues when I was in grad school, and a lot of the stress and bad eating habits. And I started to just kind of grow microgreens on my own and realized the impact that they were having in my health and realized how simple and efficient they were. So it kind of hit all of those really wonderful benefits of being, quick growing, the ability to heal your own systems and your own bodies and promote nutrition, as well as really not taxing the environment to reap the benefits of these nutrient-dense foods. And so we started early on in 2017, first growing for chefs and restaurants, and then grocery stores and farmers markets. And at that time, microgreens hadn't really hit the forefront yet. And so we ended up giving out a lot of samples, making a lot of relationships, building community. And that was for us a very instructive way on how to move about creating a farm business that's focused on relationships and community well-being. So that became a very important part of our operation. How do we integrate people and really let them experience the local food ecosystem that we're all a part of? And so through food, we've been able to address many of the issues pertaining to agriculture, climate change, food access or food justice, and nutrition. And so it's given us the opportunity to really develop a comprehensive approach to farming that is in the service of our community and our environment. So one of my favorite ways to eat microgreens is on soups or salads, sandwiches, really on anything that I can pair it with. I really try to bring as much nutrient-dense food into my life, and microgreens have been able to satisfy a lot of my desires for health and well-being. So it's pretty much up to the person how much, how often, on what they want to enjoy them on. But one of my secret recipes is actually freezing microgreens and then adding them to a smoothie. Some varieties like broccoli, for example, that we're going to show you how to see. This is the seed. I'll show you, kind of give you a little close-up view if you can kind of see. It's really small, but it's amazing the nutrient density that's in these seeds. Broccoli has a wonderful compound called sulforaphane that's responsible for addressing a lot of different activities in your body, most of which are located in your gut and in your brain. And so they're amazing. Sulforaphane is amazing at addressing inflammation, fortifying your immune system, and helping you absorb nutrients from other foods by maintaining the flora and fauna in your gut and in your system. And so that's one of our favorite varieties to grow. So we're gonna focus on that and explain to you how we grow them in two different methods.
So microgreens are these are not sprouts. Sprouts are that first 3 days of germination. We usually grow these out 7 to 10 days, sometimes a little bit longer in the wintertime, a little bit shorter in the summertime. They really, at that stage, they really have the most nutrition because they're past a sprout, and then you get phytonutrients from the sun, which helps you intake a lot more of those nutrients that you can get from these microgreens. So,
yeah, that's one of the many questions that we get is, a lot of people come to us and say, oh, I want to try your sprouts, and we always have to correct them that they're not sprouts. That really, microgreens, we take them a step farther so that they can photosynthesize from the wonderful Colorado sunshine we get in our greenhouse and develop more nutrients that generally are not found in sprouts because they're not grown in greenhouses. But microgreens have the ability to really generate much more nutrition. And we're still learning about them. So it's a fun new food crop that is in the midst of a lot of innovative university research, and new things are coming out every day about them. So we're happy to be part of that effort. So we have two different ways to grow them. We use both coconut coir, which is essentially a renewable resource made from the fibers of coconut husks. And we really like this medium because it allows us to optimize the aeration content. When you're planting microgreens, it's very important that the greens have adequate drainage and airflow, because there's so many tiny seeds that are packed into this 10 by 20 inch tray, and it's really important for the plants to breathe. As you can see, for example, here I will show you. This is how dense we grow. This is on a jute fiber pad that Dave will show you how to seed. But there's a lot of these tiny plants, and together they really bring a comprehensive nutritional profile to your everyday diet. And so I'm going to start with this coconut fiber tray, and what I like to do is just gently wet it down. You don't need a lot of soil. As you can see, this is a 2-inch tray, but we only use maybe an inch, maybe a little bit less. And really what happens is, as the roots grow, they form a mat which holds the coconut together. And so you can pull it out as a pad. And so once you wet down your tray, you have a nice even layer of soil. Now you want to evenly sprinkle the seed. We use about 28 to 30 grams of seed per tray. And a good rule of thumb is to seed just enough so that there's a seeds with space between each seed. Kind of hard to do when you're seeding this many seeds, but generally something like that. I don't know if you can see. Sort of, you don't want seeds to really kind of clump together. You want each seed to have an even amount of space, and that will just promote healthy germination and limit any complications of ungerminated seeds. After this is ready to go, then I'll take some more soil, and I just like to coat the top of them just a little bit so that the seed creates a microclimate of appropriate moisture and temperature levels to ensure really good germination. You don't need a lot, just a little bit to cover. And then in about 3 to 4 days, you'll start to see some germination. After that time, you want to gently water them. And as they start to grow and fill in the space around each other, we actually like to water them from the bottom. So we use a tray with holes. And you can either use a tray without holes on the bottom to put in some reservoir water, just a little bit, maybe like a cup's worth, and then they'll soak it up. If after 30 minutes or so you still have excess water on the bottom tray, you can go ahead and drain it. And then, yeah, just keep them covered, wait for them to germinate, and as they grow, the plants will tell you what they like, what they don't like, and because of the quick kind of growing cycle, you're able to troubleshoot and learn at a faster rate than if you were waiting for a crop to grow 2 or 3 months in the field. And then Dave will show you on our jute pad. This is what we sell in our store, so that you can order from our online farm stand and be able to use this without soil. It's a cleaner way to do it, a little bit easier, and also promotes just wonderful good root growth.
So with the jute pad, this is a plant-based fiber. Mainly, you just want to make sure you get it completely wet. Once everything's wet, I like to make sure that it's not completely, it needs to be wet, but not overly wet. So you just want to make sure you get everything out. It's pretty good.
It's good.
It's a good moisture level. I'm going to spread it out for the entire tray. Also, one thing that we didn't mention while I'm seeding this is pretty much every single one of these trays gets washed once a week after we're done using it. And that's part of our food safety plan, is to have no food safety incidences within the year. And that really keeps us on track. With our seeding, again, you want to make sure that you do exactly like Roberto said, enough seeds on there, but they're not touching each other. If they're too far apart, sometimes they have trouble germinating because they don't have enough moisture actually to help them germinate and get out of that shell. But
Yeah.
usually if you just make sure they stay relatively moist. They should pop very soon. Usually takes like 3 days, 2 to 3 days to germinate. Winter time, a little bit longer. We cover these up with another tray, like so, or you can do it the other way too. Really doesn't matter, just as long as they're getting enough humidity and enough, just making sure that they get enough humidity staying in there so that they'll be able to grow properly.
We like to actually do it like this, put an empty tray on top, because seeds need a little bit of pressure so that they know that it's time to germinate. Because we're not using soil, we do need to cover them up and add a little bit of pressure to simulate the seed in soil. And then once you start to see some roots coming out and the seeds beginning to germinate, that's about the 3rd or 4th day. Then you're able to lift up a corner of the pad and then just pour in some water. And you'll be able to water them. If it's too much and you see that they're just kind of swimming in it, you can just go ahead and drain it out. And make sure you keep it next to a indirect sunlight is best. Here in Colorado, we actually have to use some shade cover because the sun is so intense and the greenhouse tends to magnify the light. Microgreens don't need direct sunlight. As you can see, we have all these different layers and we just get indirect light, and that's enough for them to grow and photosynthesize and create the nutrients that we're all looking for.
Just want to make sure they're happy and healthy, and sometimes when they're directly in the sun, they can burn them.
Yeah. So we sell these kits. And what they contain is our jute fiber pad, 2 trays, 1 to hold the fiber pad, 1 to germinate, the appropriate amount of seed for each tray, and it's pretty easy. We also include some instructions and direct tech support from us. We've done everything wrong, so we know how to navigate problems. One thing I really tell people to do is address the problem early on. The quicker you are at addressing an issue, the better your crop is going to be. And that's kind of the task of the greenhouse grower. We really try and mitigate as much as we can through observation and then intervene as necessary and as often as possible, because the growing cycle for microgreens, as we mentioned, is very, very fast. And so problems can definitely roll out faster than you can anticipate. So prevention is always our motto around here. Prevention and observation. And so, yeah.
Also, one of the awesome parts about broccoli, since it is so nutritious, we're trying to see what other types of products we can do, and we're doing some test products now, and that our broccoli microgreens, we freeze dry them and turn it into a smoothie powder. It's around 15 ounces of microgreens into 1 ounce of smoothie powder. So we're working on kind of ratios and trying to figure out how people like this product. We like it.
I use it every day. I'll put it in my coffee. Sometimes I'll make a green smoothie and add it in there.
I usually just mix it with my matcha tea, and
it's really good too.
Perfect. But
yeah, and it's been helping us just keep our immune system strong, especially during this time. We always try to get, in whatever form we can find, the microgreens into our diets. And so now that we're moving into some of the warmer months, we really just enjoy big microgreen salads to really fortify our bodies and satisfy our taste buds. They're so tasty. There's so many different varieties, and they really add such a wonderful dimension to the foods that we eat. So they're really great for kids as well. When I've done a few workshops for kids that they get to see their own trays, and they get to just see them grow very, very fast and enjoy them. We all know how impatient kids can be. So this is a good way to get them to understand plant anatomy, the process of how plants begin to grow, and then harvest them and enjoy the fruits of their labor in about a week or so. So that's always been a wonderful addition that we've incorporated into our model this year. We're very happy that we have the community that we've developed through Microgreens, and we really hope that even remotely we're able to incorporate you into our community as well. I think now we're going to open it up for some questions, and we might be moving into a different location because we need to turn on the fans and cool down our greenhouse.
Excellent. We've got you back. Okay. Thanks, guys, for being flexible. And that was great. If you're ready, I'm going to start throwing some questions at you. So one question is, what type of soil is best? And maybe you can let us know what the sort of essential elements of the soil are, or the soil that will work best, and also soil that will work. I think that, you know, when you start seeds at home for seedlings, it's always like, you just put whatever dirt you have, or the ideal situation is this one. So maybe both of those, what we might have at home and what the ideal soil would be.
I mean, really, with the microgreens, it's not exactly the same thing as starting a seedling for your garden. We're really trying to be as clean as possible, so we actually use straight coconut coir. It's basically completely sterile because it gets dehydrated and pressed down, and then we rehydrate it and use it from there. And we also we just want to start at that where there's nothing in there except the seeds, because when you have the seeds, like, they have enough nutrients to get to where they need to go to within them for how long we grow them for. We grow them for that 7 to 10 day period. We don't really need to add any extra nutrients, but for a plant in your garden, you would need to have a more rich or robust soil to keep that plant going and getting its roots stronger after that 10-day point.
Yeah, there are some varieties that you grow a little bit longer, like cilantro, for example, or amaranth. A lot of these other varieties that you're trying to go beyond the 7 to 10 day, 12-day period, they do need a little bit of other nutrients, but really, you know, it's the seed's nutrition that grows the plant that then goes to your body. But if you do want to add some compost or you know, some kelp or fish meal, additional nutrients, then you are able to do that, and just make sure that you only use a little bit. You don't need a ton, and that's really how we do it. You just want to make sure that the consistency of whatever soil you use is nice and fluffy enough, and that it won't compact or really kind of you know, drown out the oxygen around the roots, because the plants, like I said, are so tightly packed and they do need to breathe. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb.
Excuse me. And that cocoa moss is a renewable resource. It's useful in a lot of other things. So I just got some, and it comes in this handy little brick. So I know that you can kind of get it pretty easily, probably order it at this point if you can't get to a garden store. So lots of folks are wondering where you purchase your seeds, or if you have sort of favorite sources for your seeds. And I will ask you maybe for a list that we can include in an email. So maybe you can just throw out like 1 or 2 now, and then we'll give a longer list in a follow-up email.
We actually have a affiliate partnership with True Leaf Market. So if you order seeds through our website at True Leaf, they'll help us out. We help them out, and you are able to gain access to lots and lots of different varieties of seeds. With COVID, I think they're a little bit backed up, and so, you know, we always have other options as well.
We have some local options, but really, back to the sustainability of our business and a farm, we do a lot of sunflower seeds, and since we have a little bit of land, we're going to plant around 1 acre of sunflower seeds this year to try and either supplement that cost or completely take it out of our business, so that we can, you know, save a little bit of money on seed, and we know that the seed has a strong genetics, because that's another problem with seed every once in a while from different places.
Yeah.
We try and stick to the same place for the same type of seed.
Yeah, and it's also important too to keep track of the seed lot from each batch that you get, because if there are problems with the seed, you can trace it back all the way up to the farm that produced it. Sometimes not, sometimes just a supplier, but it's always good for our purposes too, in terms of addressing food safety and being aware of working with partners and seed suppliers that our values align with ours. We really like to be aware of their practices and et cetera, everything else. So if you find a seed lot that you really like, you're able to request it from other suppliers as well. So.
Okay, great, excellent. So we will defer to your, It's true. Most of these seed companies many have closed sales to anything but commercial growers. So it may be a difficult time to grab seeds from some folks, but get them on your list and come back to it later, I think would be great if they're not open. How do you decide when they're ready to eat? And another question is if you can show us, I know you've now left your growing area, but is there any possibility you can show us how you harvest them or anything you do after harvesting them, or just talk about that a little bit, like what your best practices are for harvesting them and a post-processing procedure, which might just be digestion.
Take that one.
Yeah. Basically, we actually harvest in our greenhouse. Another part of food safety is not moving a plant once it gets to its final resting place. So we actually harvest on tables right next to our growing modules. And so we take it out, we harvest, and with a knife, we actually clean down the tables. There's a whole process, but mainly we just harvest with a knife by hand, and that actually ensures our quality. As long as right now we're not at a machine stage, so usually when you move to automation, you lose quality. So right now, I think for the foreseeable future, we're gonna hand harvest for as long as possible. And then once we get it into a bin, all marked and everything with date and all our lot numbers and extra food safety precautions, we bring it into our harvest kitchen or our packing kitchen, and then we pack it in packaging, either 2.5, 4 ounce, 8 ounces, and then pounds for wholesale suppliers. And
yeah, I mean, the best way to know that they're ready is when you really see the true leaf formed, well, not the true leaf, but the first 2 cotyledons, which are the initial 2 baby leaves, that they're nice and lush and deep green, or depending on the variety, different colors. We have generally identified the 10 to 12 day mark for most of the brassica plants. Some of the herbs will go longer, but that generally is kind of the time frame where they're ready to harvest. Some things to keep in mind, especially during this situation with COVID, is we really want to make sure that we can limit as much contamination as possible. So we do wear, we wear hairnets, we change our clothes, we wear gloves, sanitizer, face masks, and that goes all the way through from harvest to packing to even delivery. So all of those things kind of have to be followed, and there's wonderful resources from CU Boulder, the CU system. They've put out some guidelines. The CDC has also put out some guidelines. So in addition to our good agricultural practice protocols, we also institute those right now. And there's plenty of links that you can find those too. But one of the great things that has been helpful for us in terms of maintaining quality is making sure that as soon as they're cut, they're cooled down. You don't want them to spend too much time outside of cold storage. So if you're able to cut them and put them in the cooler, that's the best way to ensure strong shelf life and less degradation of nutrients.
Excellent. And do you harvest them just right at the base? Are you cutting them? Could I use a pair of scissors to do that? Or you mentioned a knife, but.
You use a sharp knife. The sharper, cleaner the cut, the less oxidative stress you're going to cause the plant. We have found that scissors actually tend to pinch the tissues and create some damage, and that could potentially increase the likelihood of contamination. So,
but the scissors do work.
Scissors do work.
Make sure they're sharp.
Yeah, sharp scissors. One cut. That's kind of what defines raw agricultural products, is one cut. Mm-hmm. Additional cuts, now you're getting into some processing in terms of regulations and everything. There is a basis for that, but just keep it clean, simple, and sharp.
Great, perfect. So in terms of the jute pads and the coconut core, a couple questions. Are the pads reusable, and how many times could I reuse one jute mat? And Janet has asked if the coconut core is a mat or loose. When I mentioned the brick, I know that there's kind of a magical experience of put it in a bucket, add the water, and I was watching it like a little kid, oh, it's growing. So it comes in a little brick, and then you loosen it up and put it in water, and it kind of grows and loosens itself up. So I think if you want to add anything else about the coconut core, please do. And then also just reference those jute mats and how many times we can use them.
Yeah, so the jute mats are only used once because they don't really have the opportunity to, like, once you cut them, there's still going to be organic matter, like the initial part of the stem that connects to the jute mat and then the roots on the bottom. So that makes it very difficult to reuse again. But we really see the trade-off in terms of maximizing nutrition per tray in that sense. And after that jute pad is used up, it breaks down into humic acid, so you can cut it up, put it in the bottom of a house plant or in your garden, so that you can continue that cycle of nutrients back into the earth. That's what we're doing with our excess jutes that after we harvest them, we basically compost them to remediate the soil around our farm. And so that's kind of the way we're trying to complete that cycle of the loop. With the coconut core, you can reuse that, but it has to go through a period of composting, sterilization, because you don't want to reintroduce anything potentially hazardous or any kinds of bacteria that can affect the growth of your new microgreens. So we always want to tell people to start fresh every time, just to limit the amount of contamination. And there is a way to reuse it, and that's through composting. So that's how we would say the best way to utilize that.
Excellent, perfect. And it's great stuff for compost, and especially now if you might be composting at home, it's an awesome piece of material for compost, especially if you're putting fresh food scraps into it, because it'll soak some of that stuff up. Next question is, what's the ideal temperature for growing microgreens? Like, can you explain at home the environment I want to create for the best success in my microgreens?
Yeah, mainly, are you comfortable at home is
Yep.
the question. And if you are, they are.
Yep.
So most of us keep our houses anywhere from 65 to 75 degrees, depending on your temperature likings. But I'm cold. My wife is hot. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that temperature is perfect. Humidity, really, it's like, again, if you're happy, they're happy. So if you keep it in your house next to a windowsill, either just near anywhere in your house, pretty much, that indirect sunlight is perfect for them. So
yeah, in terms of an actual measure of humidity, we try to keep ours right around 50% or a little bit lower. You will see different characteristics of the plant begin to show depending on your specific environmental region, your microclimate. But generally 65 to 75 is kind of the optimal temperature range, and the humidity is right around 50%. Could go a little bit higher, could go a little bit lower. The plants are resilient enough to accommodate that buffer, but you definitely don't want to go, super high in humidity in like the 80% or even lower than like 20%. The plants will start to show signs of stress. But I think the best way to really understand it is just try and observe and understand what the plant is trying to tell you. They have their own way to communicate with us. And so if we're observant enough and we're trying to really connect with them, then you should be able to kind of judge and kind of move along based upon the responses from each plant.
Excellent. I love that. It's kind of a nice practice in awareness and consciousness, especially right now. We have some time and space to pay close attention to these things, which I think is great. We're jumping around a little bit in the order of your process, but do you wash the microgreens after you harvest them? And one thing I want to add in here is I noticed that often microgreens have that little spongy pad on the bottom. Is there something I can put in my refrigerator, like herbs? I put a little paper towel in the container. Is that something you would do with microgreens to kind of absorb that moisture? But first I want to answer, do you wash them after harvesting? And if so, how, since they're so delicate?
All right, well, with the washing, we didn't really kind of explain this fully, but microgreens are that raw agricultural product. So like Roberto said, with that one cut, it's like going out into the field and cutting off a head of broccoli So that one cut makes us that raw agricultural product. And that means that we suggest everybody washes all their microgreens because they are all raw agricultural products. But I wash them at home. The sunflowers, if you wash them, the seed hulls fall off a lot easier. And I mean, most of the times, that's the only ones I wash. So I don't usually wash them, but I have to recommend that everybody washes all the vegetables that they consume, because it's just really important to just know where your greens are coming from. So
yeah, and I would add to that, you want to wash them right before consumption. If you wash and then try and store them, you're going to accumulate a lot of moisture that actually shortens the shelf life of each product, each microgreen. And so we do add a moisture pad into our containers when we take them to the grocery store, or for some of our chefs and restaurants when they were ordering, and our CSA customers. If you can try and keep them cold and dry after they've been harvested and only wash them prior to consumption, then you're really ensuring the shelf life and the quality of the greens. That's kind of the best rule of thumb that we've kind of come across. Was there another part to that question, or was
paper
it...
towel? Yeah, moisture.
Paper towel is kind of the material we like to use, preferably unbleached, and try and be as sustainable as possible with that. And yeah, just make sure that you don't wash them and then store them.
Great, thank you. Let's see, maybe you can mention a few microgreens that you grow. So you mentioned broccoli types and brassica types, and then Dave, you mentioned the sunflowers. What other microgreens do you grow besides those? And maybe what are some of your favorites?
I mean, we grow our favorites, so
Yeah.
And those are them.
Our 5 main ones that we grow are sunflowers, peas, broccoli, radish, and purple kohlrabi. And really, we just find those are, like, we try and look for the most nutritious ones. But with the restaurants that we used to supply, we grew 20 other different varieties. There, you can go down the list.
Yeah, cilantro, basil. We were also doing nasturtium shoots, nasturtium flower, corn shoots. We call them popcorn shoots. They're actually grown in the dark. Because when they start to photosynthesize, they start to gain more of a bitter flavor and turn green. And so growing them in the dark creates that lush, beautiful yellow color, and very, very sweet. The sugar content really is there. Others that we grow are
like Mizuna,
arugula.
Yeah, they all have very distinct flavors also.
Yep.
So,
and,
yeah, go ahead.
We also do a few different varieties of radish. So there's a purple Rambo radish that we grow, or a China rose radish that's a little bit of a pinkish reddish color, our red arrow radish, and then the beautiful amaranth, which is just some of the most beautiful, colorful red, deep red microgreens that are also highly nutritious as well. And some of the herbs as well, satsoi, and
sorrel.
There's
a ton of them. We've tried everything just for fun. Like, I think someone asked, seeds. All the seeds are just any seed you can turn into a microgreen. So
yeah, microgreen is essentially refers more to a stage in the plant's life than any particular production method. It's the basically the initial kind of week or so, up to 3 weeks, that they could be considered microgreens or shoots. Pea shoots are also another one that we grow, and it's one of our favorites.
The nutrition in the peas and the sunflowers is just off the charts. It's 6 grams of protein for 2 ounces of microgreen sunflower microgreens, and then the peas have 4.5 grams of protein for 2 ounces. So we really like to push those along with our broccoli. That's our kind of our smoothie mix. We found the most nutritious ones and tried to mix them in. I think that's where we're gonna try to move to with our smoothie powders too, is to get those most nutritious ones to.
But experiment. You can try and do a microgreen out of any seed. See how it goes. See what it tastes like, and maybe there's a new variety that we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah, find your own favorite, I suppose, and that sounds great. Um, let's see. One question that I want to get to is, can microgreens be harvested multiple times, or do I need to replant for every harvest?
Well, there is some varieties like pea shoots can be harvested multiple times. They're kind of the cut and come again variety. So every time you cut, there's a leaf node there that will bring up another shoot. But generally, if you're growing them for microgreens, you're cutting off the top two leaves and you're leaving a stem behind. So it's hard for the plant to photosynthesize without those leaves. Generally, what we find is the pea shoots are able to come back again, and nasturtium shoots are also another variety that can come again as well. But generally, like, we try to just do one cut unless we want to grow it in the garden and do full mature green, although that's going to take more fertilizer, more soil, more time, more water. And so we're really trying to maximize the resources and the nutrition as much as we can.
Also,
and wheatgrass. Yeah, wheatgrass. Totally forgot about that one. That's another good one, another favorite.
Great. And you kind of just answered another question, which is, can we grow microgreens in the garden? I don't know if you want to add anything to that. It just sounds like it's a little more challenging.
Customers at our farmers markets that they say that they used to eat sunflower microgreens out of the backyard and they just didn't know that's what they were. But I don't know, that's my story with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if you have the garden space, you should try and grow the mature greens. If you don't have the space or you don't have adequate light, growing them indoors is a fantastic way to build that connection with your food, to understand how, the process of growing greens, and really to maximize a window or, a grow light to grow your food. It's great to just kind of snip off a little bit from each tray, add it to a dish for dinner, lunch, even breakfast, and let the rest grow. So that's always a good opportunity for a family to gain some, food sovereignty in terms of really being connected with their food and having the ability to satisfy their nutritional needs. One of the cool things that I think we're embarking on right now in terms of our response to COVID is really addressing microgreens as a crop for food security. And it's one of the reasons why we've partnered with some food pantries and a lot of the emergency food aid coming in, so that we always have a consistent supply that we can offer every week, year round. And so that just brings in some security for us as farmers, but also for our communities that may be affected in different ways. And so having a source of food close to the community that's always growing, highly nutritious, nutrient abundant, and being mindful of our limited resources, especially with water here in Colorado, it really brings microgreens into a very special, unique place in our local food system.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you have any, thanks for adding that. I think that's super important. And really creative in a place like Colorado that has like extreme seasons. It's not a super long outdoor growing season, and really important to make that accessible year round. You mentioned water lightly, and I'm going to ask if there are any special considerations with water, with the pH of the water, filtered water. Is there anything I need to do, or just pull it out of my sink if I've got good water and water?
Water's really, yeah, water's like the big issue.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, if you just grow these seeds, were going to grow no matter what. If you give them bad water, they'll still take off. But you kind of just have to make sure the water that you'd be drinking, I would say, is good enough for them. But in our commercial setting, we actually take the precautions of doing extra steps. pH, we sterilize our water and a few other things just to make sure that everything stays as sterile as possible, and just to keep up with our quality. That's again, it always comes back to the quality and the yields that you're getting. So
yeah, I mean, pH is important because there's a certain range that nutrients are made available to the plant. If the pH is too low, certain nutrients are locked out, even those found in the water or in the soil. And if it's too high, the same thing happens. So if you have the ability to test pH, you really want to keep it between like 6.5 and 6.8. That's like the optimal range to absorb a lot of different varieties of nutrients for the plant to grow. And so that's why pH is important, but also kind of keeping in mind the, some city water might not be the best. And so being mindful of filtration systems that are able to take out impurities is very important in terms of giving the plants the best that they could get. So that's what I would say in terms of being mindful of water.
Yeah, they can grow to their full potential,
Yeah.
basically, if you give them better water.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to ask a few more questions before we get to the end of the hour. So many questions, which is so great. Thank you guys for being so engaged. And thank you, Roberto and Dave, for sharing your deep wisdom on this topic. If your sprouts are getting leggy, it sounds like maybe they're in a south-facing window, misted 2 times a day, but they're getting leggy and then they collapse. What is happening?
The plants are reaching for light. So if they're getting leggy, that means they're not getting enough sunlight, and so they're trying to reach for it. So if you can either bring a light source closer, maybe you have a lamp or a grow light that you can bring a little bit down to their level, that's really good. The opposite can happen too. If there's too much light, they'll get stunted. As well as temperature considerations will also affect the legginess or the size of them in the beginning.
I mean, that really doesn't affect their nutrients so much. So if you kind of want to just cut them right before they lay down if they're not getting enough light, and you still get the nutrients from them though. So, because you can grow these things in complete darkness, they're just not going to be at their full potential again. So.
Excellent. And speaking of the nutrients, it sounds like that your recommendation is to eat them fresh. We don't want to cook them and cook out the nutrients. Someone has asked, if you cook them, are you cooking out the nutrients? Which I think, yes. And they're so tasty when they're fresh. So it's like a perfect topping for just about anything you did cook. Something fresh and tasty on top. Do you have any recommendations for a substitution if somebody can't get coconut coir or jute?
Yeah, I mean, there's, if you just go to your garden supply store and try and find a seed starting mix that's nice and fluffy and aerated, that's always a good option. I've seen people use paper towels as well, that you can just, you fold into a mat and then the plant will germinate and root.
I don't like to use perlite mixes mainly. It does help with the aeration, but sometimes the greens will lift up the perlite pieces. And so when you cut them, you have to wash them to make sure all that's off of there. Otherwise, you get a really nasty. So we've never used perlite, but a lot of people do, and they grow successfully either way. So
and we do have a large supply of jute pads because that's what we prefer. So if anybody wants to get in touch with us, we do sell packs of 10 that we can ship out, and you can have them there. But we've made sure that our supply for jutes and seeds are consistent and that we're able to get through this period. So we're happy to share as much as we can.
Excellent. And we'll include that in that email, the direct link to get some jute pads from you guys, which I think is a great option, a really great option. One more question, maybe one more. If you're in a place that's really hot, like Los Angeles, and the ambient temperature is in the high 80s in your natural environment, and you're not using an AC or anything like that, what can we do to help the microgreens kind of be okay in an extra hot environment?
Yeah, so without getting too technical, the ambient temperature could be different than the surface temperature of the leaves. And so if you have a thermometer that's able to read the surface temperature of leaves, then you're able to kind of identify exactly what the plant is experiencing. So we've had instances where, the ambient temperature is like in the 90s, but the surface temperature of the leaves is in like the low 80s. And so that's actually pretty acceptable. One thing is just to always keep them ventilated so that the ventilation of a fan, for example, or an open window can cool them down, even if they have that light source next to them. So that's always pretty good. 80s is actually okay. It's not going to damage your plant too much, although you might need to water them more often because the plant is drinking up more and photosynthesizing and putting all of these moving pieces together so that they can grow.
And you'll be on the lower end of the 7 to 10 days kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or 7 to 12 days. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and if there's any more questions, like feel free to email us. The email is microgreens@emeraldgardens.farm, and we're happy to assist in any way that we can. I think one of the best kind of values that we want to offer is for people to take control of their own food and their nutrition. And if we can help people do that, we've already accomplished part of our mission.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. There are still some outstanding questions. I think this is the most questions we've ever gotten in a Slow Food Life session, which is great, but please take up these guys on that offer and reach out to them directly with your questions, and check out the shop, get yourself some jute mats and get started at home. If you're interested in, Dave mentioned the sunflowers, if you're interested in seed saving, we actually have a session on that in a couple of weeks, so you kind of can really track your own seed source, become your own seed source in a way. So keep an eye out for that if that's something that interests you. We have some garden sessions happening every Thursday. In the meantime, thank you guys so much. I want to be respectful of your time and let you go on the hour, and we'll follow up with everybody with links to the Emerald Gardens shop and the email to get a hold of these guys, the seed source, all those things you're asking after. We'll get at you with those things, and a recording of this session so you can revisit those questions you had in here. Roberto and Dave, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We love what you're doing. You are living the good, clean, and fair food for all mission, and we really appreciate that. And we are so happy to have folks like you in the network who are doing it on the ground in real time. So thanks for all your efforts during this strange time. We hope that you're doing well. And to all of you who joined us today, thanks for being here. Stay healthy, enjoy your microgreens, and we'll see you next time. I'm gonna hand it back over to Roberto and Dave if you wanna make any remarks to wrap this up for us.
I just want to say thank you for involving us in this. It does make us feel good that we're doing something, so
yeah,
that's worthwhile.
Yeah, one other piece of offering that we want to let people here know is that really support your farmers. We're going through a hard time, but we're also very critical in our food supply, and so a lot of us have experienced loss of markets with wholesale and restaurants closing. But we're really hoping that we can build resilience in our economies, in our food systems, in our own communities, and through food, I think that anything is possible. So let's see if we can all rally together and support our farms and build this wonderful Eden that we hope that we can all enjoy. So support your farmers.